Hello and welcome back to In Shannon's Kitchen. Today we're going to be making a Cantonese dim sum classic Shumai, one of my family's personal favorites, although honestly I like the hagao better, but I have a recipe for that, so I'll definitely link it down below. But if you want some juicy pork and shrimp dumplings, stay tuned, learn how to make it, and you can have dim sum at home when all the restaurants are closed. So let's get started. So the process of making this shumai is quite simple and fast if you use a food processor. So I'm just going to add some dry shiitake mushrooms, which I rehydrated overnight in some hot boiling water just until they're nice and soft, and then just drain that water out and add the mushrooms into the food processor along with some peeled, raw, and preferably deveined shrimp. And then to that I'm going to add some oyster sauce for a nice fishy and salty bite, along with some light soy sauce. I do recommend that you use the light soy sauce only because the oyster sauce and the shrimp is quite salty already. And then for a nice nutty bite, I'm adding some toasted sesame oil along with some SHAOXING wine and a few dashes of white pepper. And then just to bind all the ingredients together, I'm going to add a few tablespoons of cornstarch. And you notice here I haven't added the pork yet. This is a pork and shrimp dumpling after all. But the pork, I'm using ground pork, so if I add it too early on and I just blend it, some of the fat could actually separate from the pork itself. So if you're using like whole pieces of pork, like pork belly for example, I would recommend that you add it initially during the first blend. And you want to make sure that the texture of your dumpling filling is essentially very rough and still has a few chunks in it, not too smooth, not like baby food. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a nice rough mixture that has nice chunks of mushroom, shrimp, and pork. So now I'm just adding my pork last just to combine all those ingredients together. And then basically you're done with the filling. And like I said, it's super simple and fast if you use a food processor, but of course you can always chop all your ingredients by hand and then just combine it in a bowl. So now for the wrapper, you can actually buy shumai wrappers, which essentially is like a round wonton skin. You can see how nice and thin it is here. It's basically almost translucent. You can see through it. And then just to fill these dumplings, this has to be the easiest dumpling to make ever. There's no wrapping, there's no pleating involved. Basically, you just want to dollop it in straight into the center and then give it a nice firm squeeze around the edges of the shumai. And you want to squeeze it and press and basically fill it up all the way to the top of the shumai. And if you notice that if you put your dumpling down onto your work surface, it doesn't sit quite flat and evenly. You want to give it a few taps on your work surface so the bottom is nice and flat, and that way it'll sit flat in your steamer basket. And if you ever had shumai before, you might have noticed a few flecks of orange coming from some flying fish roe or caviar, but I'm using the more budget-friendly version here. We are in a pandemic after all. So I'm just taking some grated carrot along with some thinly sliced scallions. You could also use chives to give it that bright green pop of color. And steam it over about medium to medium high heat. Do make sure that water is at a full rolling boil and you have a lot of steam coming up as you put your steamer basket in. And do make sure, I didn't show it here, to cover your whole pan using like some sort of domed lid to make sure that you insulate your dumplings so they cook all the way through. It takes about 10 to 12 minutes until that pork is all the way cooked through. And then do make sure to enjoy these dumplings when they're fresh, hot, and steamy. So succulent, so juicy, of course, coming from that fatty pork along with that juicy and succulent salty shrimp. It's so good. And what also makes a good pairing with this is some hagao, so I'll definitely leave that link down below for the recipe. And you know, you can have your whole dim sum spread. I do plan to do more dim sum recipes, and hopefully this helps with any sort of dim sum cravings that you might have during this pandemic when all those restaurants are closed. It's so sad. So do make sure to go out and support your local restaurants. This is going off on a tangent at this point. And also make sure to do some home cooking as well. Make sure to let me know in the comments below what you think. Subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button, and I'll see you back here next time.